Hello, hello. Today's horror story is written by Erutious.
I met someone new at the hospital tonight. Someone with a very interesting story. Mark came over to watch YouTube videos on his break as I sat behind the reception desk, and he had someone with him wearing the brown scrubs of a custodian. Mark said his name was Gerald, and they had struck up a friendship as he cleaned the switchboard. The two had started talking about spooky stuff, and Mark had told him about the calls from the third floor, the phantom calls that happened in the wee hours. Gerald had told him some stuff about the third floor as well, strange occurrences, but nothing like he had today. It's, not really that scary, but it's pretty weird. I told him I'd love to hear it, and so he began. It all started after Maria disappeared.
The meeting was just as it was every day. The head custodian gave out assignments, talked about budgets, assigning special teams before he started down a very different track. He told us that the third floor would be cleaned in pairs now, and that no one would clean alone after 8 p.m. There were many raised eyebrows at this. It would take longer to clean if they had to do it in pairs, but the next announcement really made them stare. Management has asked us to remind you that if you hear anyone calling your name from a room you know to be empty, do not respond. Leave the area and inform a member of the custodial team. You will not be disciplined. Management wants to ensure that no one else goes missing on shift. We broke then, going to clean our assigned areas. They were talking about Maria, of course. Maria had been a custodian at the hospital for several years. She had been working her way through cosmetology school, living with her mother and helping her with the bills as she did so. Anyone who worked with Maria knew that she was passionate about her family and her education. She was friendly, but she made it very clear that she didn't have time for boys or needless waste. She worked, went home, went to school, and then repeated the next day. So when she disappeared one night during her shift, it was harder to write off as just a young person disappearing with her boyfriend. Staff had been questioned, work schedules had been looked over, cameras had been watched, and Maria remained unfound. It showed that Maria had come to work, she had clocked in at the scanner box, and she had gone to her start of shift meeting. She had taken her cart up to the third floor and began to clean the rooms. She had cleaned 3 north, the short stay wing, and moved to 3 south, the longer residency wing. Many of these rooms were empty. COVID had made long stays more a matter of quarantine, and those people were housed downstairs in the ER overflow. She had gone to lunch at 7:30 and then returned to her duties. At 9, a camera near the nurse's station had seen her turn suddenly and look into room 405. She had stood as though hearing something inside. The mop she had been putting away looked like it might fall out of her hands, and she let it fall from the cart as she took a step towards the room she'd been staring at. She stepped into the room like a sleepwalker, and never stepped back out again. That had been a week ago. The announcement about the voices had come after they'd interviewed some of the girls she worked with. They said she'd been nervous lately. She claimed that she hadn't been sleeping well, and she told them she had dreamed about this place. In the dream, she was cleaning the hallway, and from the doors, she could hear voices calling her name. They told her to come to investigate, to come to look, to come to see. And just as she would catch sight of the speaker, she would come awake crying. She couldn't remember what she had seen in those rooms, but it always filled her with a sense of dread. When she started hearing voices at work too, she asked others to come clean with her. They said she was afraid to be alone, especially on the third floor, where the voices seemed to follow her. She had stopped sleeping at all, her eyes bearing dark circles, and the last day they had seen her at work, she confided that her studies had suffered as well. She was slowly driving herself crazy with these delusions, one of the housekeepers had said, and I think if it hadn't gone on, she would have crashed her car on the way to work one day soon. Now, Maria was gone, and more than one custodian had refused to clean the third floor. Something that was about to become a big problem for me. I was cleaning the first floor bathrooms when Roger approached me. "Gerald, I need to move you for a while." I looked up from my mop bucket. Yeah? Who quit? Jan, right after I told her she would have to clean the third floor. I need you to move up to the third floor to work with Daryl. I rolled my eyes. Christ, are you sure that's not why they quit? I know. But you know how hard it is to fire anyone around here. Look, I just need you to clean up there for a couple days. A week tops. I'll even give you an extra couple days off, with pay, once I replace Jan. What do you say? I thought it over. A 4-day weekend, 2 of them with pay, and all I had to do was clean with Daryl for a few nights. Yeah, I suppose that would be okay. I'd already figured that would mean cleaning by myself, but that wouldn't be so bad either. Cleaning was monotonous, but it wasn't terribly hard. Half the rooms I'd have to clean were empty anyway, so it would just be dusting and some light upkeep. What was the worst that could happen? I took my cart and headed upstairs. The elevator chugged amiably as I rode it up to the 3rd floor. And when the doors closed, I could already see a cart waiting in what had been the patient waiting area. And it was now just a corridor with benches. I could see soda cans on it, 3 or 4 empties, and about 3 that were ready for sacrifice to Daryl's thirst. I knew just whose it was. Daryl's cart was much like Daryl, messy and unconcerned with it. Daryl had as much business being a custodian as I did a pigeon. But Roger had been right. They were desperate for help, and Daryl came to work, even if he didn't do anything. I walked over to 3 North and introduced myself, asking what still needed to be cleaned. The charge nurse sniffed. Everything, to my knowledge. I haven't seen Daryl at all. Not that I'm surprised. I sighed. I hoped that Jan would have cleaned at least some of 3 North before quitting, but I suppose that was too much to hope for. I set to work with my mop and my cleaners and started cleaning up behind patients and staff. It took forever, some of the toilets in the patients' rooms looking like they hadn't been cleaned in years, and when I finally rolled my cart off the wing, it was after 9. I was thinking longingly of my dinner, but decided to finish 3 South first so I could eat and start on 3 East when I got done. As expected, 3 South was a ghost town. The nurse's station was empty, the monitors dark, and the whole wing very quiet. I wondered which one of these rooms I'd find Daryl asleep in, and shook my head as I set about dusting the nurse's station. The dust wasn't too thick. It was obvious that the station had either been dusted recently or the wing had been cleared out recently. The break room was also pretty clean, and I only had to clean a few moldy food items out of the fridge and change some garbages. The bathrooms needed a cleaning. Clearly, Daryl didn't do bathrooms. Once the station was clean, it was time to head to the rooms themselves. As I started cleaning, I kept my ears peeled for sounds. I didn't believe in the voices from the rooms. Ghosts and spooks weren't really something I put a lot of stock in. What I did believe in were serial killers, and people who kidnapped people to sell them into the human trafficking market. Maria had been a very pretty girl, young and well-built, and the thought that someone had just somehow taken her from the hospital wasn't terribly far-fetched. If that was the case, and this was a place they usually used to take their prey, I really did want to get grabbed or stabbed next. As I cleaned, though, I did start to think I heard something. At first, I wrote it off as the air conditioner, the ancient old thing making noises and trying to rattle the dust motes free of its guts. The more I cleaned, however, the more the air started to sound like words. I ignored it, thinking it was Daryl playing tricks, if it wasn't my own mind playing tricks on me. I kept cleaning, stepping into the rooms with the open doors and dusting the bed and nightstand. I mopped them, checked the bathrooms, and kept the mop at hand in case I had to defend myself. I felt a little sorry for anyone who tried to jump out and scare me, because they were certainly going to get a mop handle to the head. I was cleaning one of those rooms when I looked into the big window behind me and stopped in my tracks. The door to the room behind me was open. The room, looking much the same as the one I was cleaning, had someone standing in the doorway. Someone I would have known anywhere. My mother looked exactly the same as I remembered her. Her dark hair, usually up in a bun on her head, fell around her in long, dark waves of ebony. She was wearing a long white dress, her bare feet poking from beneath it. She was standing in the doorway, arms spread wide, inviting me to come to her. Her face was serene, restful, exactly the same way I remembered her the last time I'd seen her. It was the way she had looked in her casket before we shut the lid and put her in the ground. I turned around, but she was gone. I put the mop in the bucket and stuck my head out of the room and called out, seeing if anyone was near. I'd been cleaning for nearly an hour and still hadn't seen Daryl. I wasn't afraid to clean by myself. I wasn't superstitious. I didn't believe in spirits. But not seeing anyone was beginning to become nerve-wracking. I closed the door to the room I had just been in, but as I wheeled my cart away, I heard a soft voice from the room across from this one. It was low, inviting, and I couldn't help but think of my mom again. The voice was calling to me, begging me to come to her, and I stopped again to look through the door into that room. She was gone, no one inside the room but the shadowy furniture, but it almost seemed like I could feel someone watching me from inside. She was there, and she wanted me to come to her. As I stood, dithering in the hall, a multitude of voices called from the doors that stood further up. I recognized all of them. They were voices of lost loved ones, old friends, and others who had passed on. I heard my great-uncle, my first girlfriend, my third-grade English teacher, and so many more. I heard them calling to me, trying to entice me into their room, to entice me from this world, and I felt my feet pulled towards them as they called. I'd have walked willingly into their rooms, but at that moment an alarm went off, and I was jarred back to reality.
Code Blue, room 302.
I shook myself. Somewhere on 3 North there would be people with crash carts in full sprint. Somewhere on 3 North, nurses would be pulling carts and calling doctors. Family members might be yelling or crying, praying to God for their loved one who was in crisis. On 3 South, however, there was only me and the multitude of voices. With the last of my resolve, I ran.
I cocked an eyebrow at him. What happened after that?
I came to talk to Mark about it. I know he has his own weird experiences with this place, and I was hoping for some insight. He brought me down here to talk to you.
I could only shrug at him. I can talk to Carl. Maybe he'll go up to the 3rd floor with you when you need to clean. Seeing Carl wandering by about that time, I called out to him, and he came soberly over to us. I made my request, and Carl agreed, but he said he couldn't tonight. 3rd floor's closed at the moment, actually. We're missing a custodian, and a few of us are being sent up to search 3 South. After that girl disappeared last week, this'll probably get the whole wing closed off. As it happens, they did close the wing down. Daryl never checked back in with the higher-ups, and they were interested to find out why. So the wing was closed and searched thoroughly, and, as of writing this, it's still closed. It's a temporary closure at best, of course. They'll have patients in there again if the need arises. God help us if one of them goes missing. Staff is one thing, but if their precious patients go missing, they might have to actually do something about it. Gerald went back to his usual cleaning routine, but he still comes down to talk every now and again. He's a good guy, and I don't mind having a cup of coffee with him. We guys who have been privy to the strange happenings around the hospital have to stick together, after all.
Thank you for listening. You can probably handle another horror story, right?